All right, good morning, Brushfire Mind family. How we doing today? How are you holding up there, Cameroon?
I'm holding.
All right, ladies, I'm
Wait a
Christopher
minute.
Lowry, and I've got Cameron Anderson on the line with me. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the return of the Jonger. That's right, Kim Jong-Un is back. Or as the Sun put it in their article, Kim Jong-Boom! North Korea fires 2 ballistic missiles as Kim Jong-Un dramatically restarts warmongering weapons tests. Yeah, so the long-dormant little troll of a communist dictator, Kim Jong-Un, guys, he's been quiet for a hot minute. The last time they fired a test weapon was over a year ago. And now we've got 2 test weapons fired, 2 ballistic missiles test fired in 24 hours. And it's indicative of the rest of the situation. What happened? Well, when the 2020 election was given to Joe Biden, essentially America was castrated. So, let me tell you a war story. I already warned Cameron that we were going to be digging into this for a second, but let me tell you a little story. When I was in Afghanistan, because my unit was a special type, we didn't move with regular troop movements. So when the 101st Airborne ripped out and got replaced by the 10th Mountain Division, the new commander at one of the FOBs that I used to visit often when I needed to refit or get a haircut, the new commander there, and I won't say his name, not because I'm super polite, but because I just don't remember his name, but he was the colonel that was in charge of the base. Comes in and does something I'd never heard of before. He has a new building built for himself to be his private quarters, and it's a wet chew, which is to mean he had a combat housing unit that was plumbed for. So he had a private bathroom, a private shower, and a working kitchen in his personal quarters. Now, that would have been obnoxious. You're just like, okay, you're Mr. Big Daddy. You get the goodies and the amenities. You're kind of a dick, but that by itself would not have been great for the troop morale, because the rest of the troopers are basically living in tents, and you got to walk outside, and you got to basically put on your combat gear to go find a porta potty if you need to take a leak. No wonder many of us would just piss outside the tent. But this commander went so far as to have the Philly barriers, the big concrete barriers where you just drop the pieces of wall in place and build a wall around you. He went so far as to have those barriers put up around his chew to basically build himself a private walled compound with concertina wire around the top of it, in the center of a FOB, a forward operating base, which is a facility, the size of many, many football fields, surrounded by HESCO barriers, which a HESCO barrier is basically a big paper bag in a chicken wire frame that's filled with dirt, right? But it's 4 foot by 4 foot and 10 feet tall, so it'll stop bullets and RPG. It'll stop several RPGs before it's actually a problem. And then there's concertina wire around the top of that, and guard posts at every entry point with armed guards. So in the center of all that, on a FOB, let me reiterate, this is a facility that's large enough that the area that is inside of the walls that will stop bullets and rockets, the area inside of that is large enough that, in addition to a full operating military base, it contains an airfield that you can land fighters on, that you can land C-130s on, right? So a big-ass airfield. So we're talking, it's not quite the size of maybe the city of Atlanta, but it's at least the size of the city of Conyers, where, a small suburban city outside of the metro. And in the center of that, where it's almost impossible for direct or indirect fire weapons to reach without the enemy having actually gotten inside of the barricades, this colonel felt the need to erect a walled compound for himself. Imagine what that did to the troop morale on that base and in the theater at large. Now, fast forward to 2021. The thing that I have just described is a less severe telegraph of a person's personal weakness and lack of testicular fortitude than surrounding the White House with National Guard and concertina wire barriers. Okay, the current resident of the White House, former Vice President Joe lost his shit Biden, has surrounded the People's House, which I might add is public property to which we as citizens have a right to access. He has surrounded that with armed fighters and razor wire. So of course the leaders of all foreign entities, whether they're allies or somebody's complaining about sound. Looks good over here. I'm going to switch the big heads just in case. So, of course, all foreign leaders, whether they are allies or enemies, are also taking note. Oh, hey, when Donald Trump left the White House, the United States was castrated.
Yeah, and by the way, not only has he got all the National Guard there, but like they're sleeping in garages and shit like that. Like it's just, now I don't know that they're still doing that. I'm just making reference to how poorly thought out all this was. It's obvious that there's a bit of a pattern here too. It's not just North Korea that thinks that we're weak. Did you see the thing with the Chinese diplomat that basically told one of our diplomats, we're just not going to listen to what America has to say on this subject? And then, you got the news crews that are interviewing people in the caravan, and they're like, oh, no, we're totally on our way to America because Joe Biden got elected president. We wouldn't have even tried when Donald Trump was president.
Yep. So Joe Biden takes office, and all of a sudden we have rapidly increasing tensions with China. I mean, let's be real. We were already on high alert with China, but now the threat is very real because China has no reason to worry that America can defend itself. Basically, electing Joe Biden was tactically the same as disarming the population.
What happened? Did your balls drop off?
Oh, Cameron, I may have to run with that.
my favorite though is Putin challenging Biden to a debate. Like that would be hysterical. Oh.
Yeah, and that's something that Cam and I were talking about in the pre-show. Putin never would have challenged Donald Trump to a debate. And it's not because Putin doesn't think he could beat Donald Trump in a debate. Putin he's a sharp dude. He's very sharp. I don't care what you think about him morally. Is he a killer? Is he a monster? Is he evil? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, probably. But
sure, granted. That doesn't mean he can't be smart.
Yeah, and
I mean, the devil is a genius.
Well, and to think that he took what was left of the broken Soviet system, and managed to somewhat right the ship, and the entire time has had himself remain atop that pile. I mean, the countries like that have a tendency to have secession through bullets to the back of the head, and
Yeah.
the fact that that hasn't happened to him yet just says something about how smart he is.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely living in a world where assassination is not uncommon. Assassination is just a common political tool. And he's still there.
Yeah. So I also think that it's important to point out, by the way, it's Thursday. There's no Toter win today because we basically look like cucks on the world stage.
Well, Barack Biden is the president of the United States now. I doubt we're going to see a total win until the midterm elections.
I don't know. There's other small victories that we can take, but in the global sense, no. Our buddies over at Polytech, Alex has said, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat, that this is actually this is a good thing. America's going to go through a little bit of pain, and it's going to get reminded, oh yeah, this is what happens when you elect Democrats. Whoops, let's not do this anymore. And I tell you, I think this one is a bit different, given the voting legislation that's coming down the pipe, given the gun control legislation that's coming down the pipe. This is not, put the frog in water and slowly turn up the heat until it boils. They're going to go full bore here because I think they learned some lessons from the Obama administration. And the big one is Obama expended all of his political capital on Obamacare and, tried to do it by going through all the parliamentary procedures and making everything have the optics of being legit. And so they did not get near as much of the transformative agenda accomplished that Obama wanted to get accomplished. And I think now they recognize that they've got a small window and they're just going to jam as much through as they can before people start to push back. And ironically, they're going to tell us stupid little plebs that just need to listen to our leaders, that everything's going great. We're having the recovery and man, it's all just amazing. But the rest of the world is going to look at us and they're going to think that we're weak. And we just decided, okay, sure, we'll elect the 80-year-old guy that has obvious dementia. And we're just not even taking our own process seriously. And I think there's a whole lot more stuff that's going to come down the pipe, both in a foreign sense and a domestic sense. I don't think you can take the analogy far enough with how much of a castration it was to elect Joe Biden. And it's funny because you had Elizabeth Warren that enjoyed some popular support on the left. You had Pete Buttigieg, who actually won the Iowa caucus. A guy like Mayor Pete would still be a Democrat. He'd still be a leftist. We'd still be looking at a lot of the same things that we're looking at. But because it is so obvious that Joe Biden is a puppet, nobody's afraid of us. Nobody's afraid of us.
It looked like we were going in for a gender reassignment surgery, and when the U.S. came out of the operating room, it had been gender swapped to a Jigglypuff. Real quick, Patrick Lee, I don't think I've seen that name in our chat before. Good morning, brother. Patrick says confiscation will cause a war. While I agree with you on that statement, Patrick, that's tomorrow's show. Buddy, come back tomorrow for Firearms Friday. And holy shit, is it really Thursday already?
Yeah. It's what usually comes after Wednesday.
Damn. I had a good deep tissue massage yesterday morning and then a lazy rest of the day where I accomplished none of the things that I had on my list. So I may be a little behind in my mental schedule. But yeah, Patrick, definitely pop over and check us out tomorrow morning for Firearms Friday when we celebrate defensive gun use. And we will not be talking about the mass shootings tomorrow morning.
Yeah. But I think your Jigglypuff analogy is funny. Though, to be fair, if you know anything about Pokemon lore, Jigglypuff can whoop some ass if it's so inclined. It just normally isn't inclined.
Moss says, "Yep, Thursday, trash on the street." Yes, ma'am. I put the trash out this morning at about 2. I woke up around 2:30, dumped the leftovers in the kitchen tall can, and then took all that out to the curb. Got it. Thanks, Mom. Love you.
But it's really ironic to think about if even Kamala were president, because I mean, let's face it, no matter what happens, Joe Biden ain't president for the next 8 years. That's just not gonna happen.
No, two max. I think it's gonna be. I think Joe Biden is gonna leave the scene in late February, early March of 2023.
He's gonna fall up some more stairs.
Well, if he expires before the second anniversary of his inauguration, then Kamala will be counted as having served a full term, so she only gets to run for re-election once. But if he can make it to the 20th, if he can make it to January 2023 rather, anytime after that, if Kamala takes power, then she's only served a partial term, so she's allowed to run for re-election twice after that.
Yeah. A good friend of mine.
That's
a good.
Go ahead.
A good friend of mine just had like the best quote, and I'm going to steal it from her. And she said that if this gun control legislation passes, everybody's going to have to move their guns to the second floor of their house to keep them safe from Joe Biden.
Oh shit! Oh,
yeah.
Shit. What's your preparedness plan? I put rifle racks in my attic.
But no.
More and more, I'm thinking about claymore mines and Roombas. Hey Alexa, initiate home defense plan.
Oh.
You just see a handful of cops showing up at the front door and knocking. Hey, we're here to collect your guns. Roomba comes around the corner and says, "I can't let you do that, Dave."
I don't actually think it would be cops that go door to door. There'd be so many of them that would refuse to do it, either out of a sense of patriotic duty or just a sense of self-preservation.
Steve says, "Welcome to the Jungle" plays on speaker.
You're gonna die, baby.
And it's followed immediately by "Let the bodies hit the floor."
Wait a minute. I hear Disturbed coming from this house. To hell with this one. We're just going to move on. But I don't think it would be cops that would go around and do the confiscation for a whole bunch of reasons.
Wait, Steve, stop, man. You're giving away all the secrets. Steve's in here in the comments. Lawn sprinkler valve switches to gasoline tank. Claymore Roomba starts random patrol. And then Dad says, I heard a funny joke. 2 Scots and an Irishman walked out of a bar. So,
I swear.
A priest, a bishop,
this point that could happen.
A priest, a bishop, and a rabbit walked into a bar, and the bartender asked the rabbit, "What are you doing here? Or what's your blood type?" And the rabbit said, "I think I'm a type O."
Oh.
That's right.
But no,
That's
I don't.
right.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be the cops going around enforcing this. If there's one thing,
Yeah, you said that.
I'm trying to get there.
I know.
If there's one thing that the stimulus has taught us, the government literally just said, "Here, I'm just going to stick money in your bank account." I actually suspect that the government has enough metadata to know who has what firearm. Maybe not with 100% accuracy, but
yeah, but any level of accuracy in that regard is terrifying and absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, I think they've actually already got the metadata. I think they'll literally just send us things in the mail that's like, "Oh, we know you have guns. Pay your $800."
Yeah, if we're being perfectly fair, the Fourth Amendment no longer exists. The Fifth Amendment ain't holding up too good either.
But I do think we've got that natural firewall in place. And as we were talking about with Based Prism, I think if they overreach with the voting legislation, and everything in that bill is an overreach, I do think this is one of the times where the Supreme Court will actually step in and do the right thing, as opposed to a certain other subject that we can't talk about on YouTube.
Yeah, let's hope. And, we talked about the gun control thing a bit yesterday, and I guess we've wandered off of the world stage topic for now, but we covered it pretty good already. We talked a bit about the gun control thing yesterday. Something that you have to remember, something that you must never forget. There are no reasonable restrictions on the right to keep and bear arms. Now, let me make that very clear. No current gun laws are constitutionally tolerable. All existing gun laws, and I do mean even that one that says felons cannot own a firearm, there are no laws which mention firearms which are tolerable under constitutional scrutiny. Scalia was wrong in the Heller decision to say that it was reasonable to restrict the ownership of things like sawed-off shotguns. And it's not that I disagree with his opinion. He was factually wrong. The language of the Second Amendment is very clear. It is very clear. Now, we had to have a constitutional amendment in order to implement prohibition, because prohibition was an unconstitutional activity, absent a constitutional amendment.
Yep, we had to have a constitutional amendment to create the IRS, because taxing your wages
was explicitly unconstitutional.
Exactly.
Right? I'm working on a video essay that makes the argument that all constitutional amendments after the 10th were a mistake. And yes, that's exactly, I said exactly what I just said. Go ahead and run with that if you like, but if you, I'll get the specifics out there in the video
Now,
essay
we've
soon.
suffered enough.
But the thing that you must never ever forget, when these Democrats say, well, nobody's coming for your guns, we just want reasonable restrictions. In the Heller decision, in the 5-4 Heller decision, the dissenting opinion was not that there are reasonable restrictions and it's okay to pass some kind of, quote, common sense gun control. No, the dissent in Heller was civilians cannot own firearms for any reason whatsoever. The Second Amendment is only for the National Guard and the Army, which is insane. Ask you this question. How many countries out there do you think have felt the need to express in codified law that their military is permitted the use and storage of firearms?
I mean, obviously. And, you know, if you go
Right,
back...
it's so obvious that there would be no reason to write it down. So why would you write it down for any reason other than to guarantee that people other than those who are automatically assumed by matter of practical course to already retain that authority? Military members do not have the right to keep and bear arms. They have the authority to do so as granted by the consent of the governed. The right to keep and bear arms is a right not of the government, not of the military, not of the police. They have an authority that is granted to them by the consent of the governed. The right to keep and bear arms is reserved only to the citizen. Period.
Well, if you go back and you look at the supplemental writings of the period, I mean, the question was asked, okay, so who's the militia? And the answer was everybody. As in, the entire country was the militia. So this whole thing about how it only applies to organized groups is just, it's a fallacy.
Well, yeah, the Dick Act clearly details that the well-regulated militia consists of the formal military, the separate organized militias, and the people who are considered to be the unincorporated militias. But even the unincorporated militia, that's every male between 16 and 60, every able-bodied male between 16 and 60, is a part of the unorganized militia. There's a big difference between unorganized and well-regulated. And a big part of the argument there is, and this is something Republicans should be doing. This is legislation that Republicans should be forwarding. That the law, which says that able-bodied males between the ages of 15 and 60 or 16 and 60, depending on, it varies from state to state in some cases, are not just allowed, but required to maintain a working firearm and to train in the discipline of its operation for the purposes of national defense. Guys, as a man, you have a personal responsibility to be prepared to defend yourself and your loved ones. One of the things I like to talk about is pacifism. Pacifism is the opposite of decency, because to be a pacifist is to begin with the premise that nothing in this world is more valuable than the life of a person who would seek to destroy that thing. That there are zero things which exist which are more valuable than the life of a person that would seek to destroy that thing. Now, if you ask me to accept the proposition that my wife and children are less deserving of continuing their life in safety than is a crackhead on the street who decides to murder them as we're out and about on the family going to the mall or whatever. No. Let me tell you what the truth is. I have a wife and children. And where they are concerned, you are all forfeit. Where my wife and children are concerned, all your lives are forfeit. I will burn this planet to the ground for them. And that is your divine obligation as a man.
So, predictions. I guess we should at least try and put a button on it by bringing it back to the topic of the world stage. Yeah, okay, so there's saber-rattling and posturing from other world powers. But in the real sense, what comes next? What's the practical gain
actually,
countries can
real
get
quick,
out of
Cameron,
this?
just because of something Steve just dropped in the comments, Steve Rodemeyer says you can be peaceful, doesn't negate being dangerous. 100%. And let me push that a little bit further, Steve. You cannot be decent. You cannot be a good man unless you're a dangerous man. If you're not a dangerous man, you're not a good man. You're a harmless man. You're a useless man. If you do not have the capacity to cause great harm, for good or for ill, and continue in your life choosing not to cause that great harm for good or for ill, then you're not a good man because you have not made choices to be a good man. You're just a wandering blob of uselessness. You're a coward that's waiting to fall. So you can be peaceful, yes. You can be peaceful and good, yes. You cannot be good and harmless. Because harmless men don't make choices. And moral quality is a result of making choices. It is a result of making right action at cusp.
So we're over our 30 minutes, but I really am kind of interested to finish it up on this. You know, what are the predictions? What does the world gain by America being weak? I mean, putting aside the argument that says actually the world loses while America's weak.
That's a funny question, because the fact of the matter is, just before we put it aside, let me make the argument so that we're clear on what we're putting aside. The fact of the matter is that in the absence of the United States of America, the rest of the world in its entirety will slump into poverty, privation, and slavery. There will still be wealthy people out there, but they will be the royal family. They will be the Chinese Communist Party. They will be they'll be, in North Korea, it'll be the Jushin Min Jujui In Min Kong Hwa Kong Min Ji, right? The People's Democratic Party of North Korea. The party will remain in power. The royalty will remain wealthy. And they will remain so in a situation of essentially a sort of new feudalism, where the rest of you will be slaves, right? You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. If that's not some dystopian horror fest right there, that's the reality of what happens if America falls. There is not one country on this planet that enjoys any liberty or prosperity without that it's doing enormous trade transaction with the United States. We are subsidizing the planet. So, but before we say putting aside what really happens if the United States falls, just to be clear, that's what happens. Poverty, privation, and slavery globally. Now, there is a chance, and a pretty good chance, that leads to a consolidation of all those elite and royal classes who would otherwise have been the wealthy, many of whom will be culled from that rank in the process. But the creation of the one world government basically the United Nations becomes the only global authority. And then you will have a two-tier elite system. You'll essentially have the ruling class, the military law enforcement class, and the untouchable slave class. And that untouchable slave class will be 90% at least of the global population, who, by the way, will be subject to constant activities of population control. Involuntary abortion, corporal punishment, actual execution for misdemeanor crimes. Like, hate speech will be a death sentence offense. Okay, so just before we just put it aside, let's really understand what it is that we're putting aside.
I mean more in the short term, though. Like, there's a period where America's weak, and then there's a period where America cannot recover from the weakness. I mean, immediately where America is weak and these other countries press their advantage, what specifically is the advantage that they're trying to press? What do they gain?
What they think they gain is a higher profit margin by revisiting pre-Trump era parasitic trade deals. And especially when you're talking about countries like North Korea, what they think they gain, and to some extent they're correct in the short term, what they think they gain is more increase in foreign aid paid out from the United States. Like, North Korea's game is basically, hey, we've got nukes. You need to send us 400,000 tons of rice a year so that we can slap DPRK logos on it and keep our people convinced that the communist government is providing for their needs. Or we're going to fire one of these missiles at California. Which, by the way, I don't have to send you any more rice and you'll clean the shit off the streets. I like that deal.
That sounds like good math.
I'm actually pretty comfortable with that math.
Yeah, I think I'm officially calling your bluff.
Yeah, especially when it's pretty clear that you're bluffing. Sean Stryker just joined us. Good morning. And Waller, I haven't meant to be ignoring you. I just haven't had a natural break. You asked the question about when Russia and North Korea has actually assassinated people, and I don't want to go into that in specific detail in this video, but we'll address that soon. I don't know what order I'm going to put them out in, guys. I've been writing down a lot of these, like, hey, that's, you know what, somebody in the comment section asked such a damn good question that I'm going to make a video just about that. But those kind of videos are not going to be a live video episode like this. They'll be the short 2 to 5 minute kind of voiceover with stock footage videos. I need to do more of those anyway. They perform very well on YouTube. Sean Stryker, don't sell us Inland Empire conservatives out. We hate LA. Hey, I think the Reverend Maynard said it best. Mom, please flush them all away. I'm praying for rain. I'm praying for the end. I want to see the ground give way. I'll see you down in Arizona Bay. Learn to swim. Learn to swim. Learn to swim.
Yeah.
Did you just Waller just asked, yo, who's flushing a toilet? Well, it's not me.
I'm under a bridge. You could just be hearing the echo from me being under a bridge.
Hell, it could have been somebody upstairs at my house. I mean, the back corner, the plumbing is in the back corner of the basement over there. So, okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up? We're 10 minutes over our usual run time. I've got all the time in the world, but I know you've got shit to do.
And I am about to have to go do the shit. But the one prediction that I would add to the pile is that there will be a superpower. The nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
And if America stops being the superpower, it will not be suddenly that the world is full of equal entities. There will be somebody at the top of the hierarchy. There always has been, and there always will be. And unless you're okay with that being China, a lot of things need to be rethought. Like, deeply rethought.
Yeah.
But that's my prediction, is that China's actually going to start sliding in the back door with a whole bunch of other countries. And they've already started to do it. So, it's... But that's all I've got.
All right. Thanks for watching today, guys. Make sure you come back tomorrow for Firearms Friday. It's our... I think it's the best show we do all week. We have a whole lot of fun with it. And we look forward to seeing y'all then. Be safe out there. Love you. Take care.